Okay, hello everyone. We are gonna have our cooking recipe this week be a dinner versus a dessert, and we're going to make ham and cheese sliders. So what you're going to need is everything that I sent you, and a couple of the things will look a little bit different because it's not super feasible to send you a whole bottle of these two items, so I bagged them up for you, and I'll get to that in a bit. But you will need a baking dish, kind of a smaller one, so that your sliders, the rolls will fit right into it. You don't need a super big one, but if that's all you have, that works as well. And then you're going to need a smaller bowl to melt butter in. And then you will need a knife, a serrated one. A bread knife is basically what that means. So it has kind of these jagged edges on it, you can see. And I definitely would recommend getting help from the adult in your household when you go to use this if you haven't before. We're also going to want a whisk. And you just heard my oven go off. Make sure to preheat to 350 like we always start with, so that everything is ready to go by the time we're done mixing everything together. So we'll go ahead and get started. There might be a couple things I forgot to mention, but we should be okay. All right, I am gonna grab a spoon as well. First thing I'm gonna do is just kind of spray my dish, and you can also just use butter. You can rub your stick of butter on there. You don't have to use a cooking spray, but what I'm gonna do is take my half a stick of butter, plop it in there, and I'm going to melt it. Start with 30 seconds at a time. And while that's going, I'm going to cut these rolls. So hopefully you didn't separate the rolls before you started, because we want them to stay together. That's how they're gonna cook nicely. So we're gonna take our serrated knife, and we're gonna tip these on either side, whichever side you wanna start on, and we're gonna cut them in half going down this way. So you just want to be careful when you're cutting with a bread knife. You don't want to squish the bread. You want to just go slowly and let the let the knife do the cutting against the bread. So we're about halfway through. So that we'll end up with two halves here. See? So it kind of looks like it's just one flat thing, because that way when we top our sandwiches after they bake, we'll be able to just pull them away. But it makes it really easy to layer everything, and you'll see what I'm talking about once we start layering our ham and cheese. So that's that first step. Check on my butter. My butter is partially melted, so I'm gonna go ahead and pop that back in for about 15 more seconds. And if you are melting in a glass bowl, be very, very careful when you reach in there, because it might be kind of hot. So my next step, I'm gonna put the bottom half of this right into my glass baking dish that I'm going to be using. So that's there and out of the way. Don't need my big knife anymore. I recommend once you're done with your knife, get it out of the way so we don't accidentally cut ourselves. All right, my butter dish is pretty warm. So the part that I was telling you about, you won't have to do the measuring, but I'll tell you what the measurements are, and I will put them in the with the recipe, so that if you want to make these again, you'll know exactly what the measurements are. Or if you want to do a full batch, because we're using the King's Sweet Hawaiian rolls, and they come in a sheet of 12. So if you were to do this, you would just need to double the amount that I'm giving you. So we have Worcestershire sauce, and we have yellow mustard. You can also use Dijon mustard. That's what a lot of recipes call for, but some people aren't super big fans of the taste. One of the other tips that I wanted to add in there is when you get your bag, it's going to have the mustard and the Worcestershire sauce mixed in. Just like what we did last week, how I showed you how to do the the piping bag for the frosting, you're going to cut the tip off of the Ziploc bag, and that's how you can squeeze the mustard into the butter mixture. That's how you'll do that. And again, just make sure you read the recipe notes, and I will put that in the comments as well. Start with half a tablespoon of mustard. And we're gonna go right here into our butter that we just heated up. And we'll go there. That's about half. We're overflowing a teeny tiny bit, but it's not too bad. And then I'm gonna just use 1 teaspoon of this. So if you were doing a full 12 sliders, you would go a full tablespoon of mustard, and then you would go 2 teaspoons of the Worcestershire sauce. So find my teaspoon. Maybe. Gonna mix all of this up so that color in there is changing. My butter was just a regular butter color. Now you can see it's kind of a darkish because that's almost like a soy sauce color. So that's really nicely incorporated in there. And now, what we're going to do, I've got a couple little chunks left in there, so I'm just gonna whisk it a little bit. Okay. So our next step is I'm going to take my spoon. If you have a pastry brush, you can also brush it. I'm just gonna take a very, very small amount, and I'm just gonna kind of drizzle onto this bottom layer. Don't know if you can quite see that. I need to angle down a little bit more. And if you look right there, there's where I drizzled all of that. Now, I'm gonna grab my ham. You should have 4 slices of ham that fit super nicely across the top. So I'm gonna make sure I put 1 starting at this edge, and I'm gonna go 1 starting at the other edge. Over here. Okay. And my last step for this is the Swiss cheese. We've got some cheese here. Go there. 4 slices that we'll use up. Okay. So now I'm going to do exactly what I did over on the top. On the bottom, I'm going to do that on the top now. So here, I'm just going to kind of spoon this butter mixture onto the top. I'm going to do a little bit more on the top than I did on the bottom. And the nice thing about these King's Hawaiian rolls is that they really soak up anything that you put on them. So it's pretty good. And now we're going to put the lid back on our sandwiches. So I've got that right there. And we put that there. One thing that I want to note is that we want to let this soak up for 5 to 10 minutes before we bake. So our last step is kind of a fun one. I'm gonna whisk this one more time because see how it's getting kind of separated? It's just because of the butter and the mustard trying to separate from each other. Okay, now we're going to take our spoon, and what's left, we're actually going to just pour it over the top. I want to get it in all those cracks. And it's going to fill itself in there. And as it bakes, it's gonna soak into all of that yummy, yummy Hawaiian bread. And if you see any other places where you wanna use this extra sauce, feel free. But we definitely wanna get all of the tops of these rolls brushed. That's what's gonna make them nice and buttery as they bake. And you may have seen these before. Sometimes people put poppy seeds on them, and they're really good with poppy seeds because the poppy seeds have some crunch to them. Poppy seeds are kind of not always the easiest to find, so we decided to skip that. They're not necessary by any means. But like I said, you can also make this again if you choose with Dijon mustard. So we'll let this sit for about 4 more minutes. And then we will pop it in the oven. And this is going to go in the oven for about 20 minutes. And you want it to get bubbly, you want the tops to get a little bit browned. That's really what we're looking for here. And you want the cheese to get melty. If you notice that it's getting too brown, because as I talk about every week, everyone's oven is going to run at a different temperature. You're gonna wanna just watch it. I would check it at 10 minutes, check it at 15 minutes. And if it looks like the cheese is really melty and it looks good to you, then you can go ahead and pull it out. But we'll go ahead and let this rest for about 3 more minutes at this point, and then I'm gonna pop it in for a solid 20 minutes, but I'm gonna check it at 10. So we'll go from there. Okay, so if we take a look, you can hear the crackling and bubbling of my butter. The cheese is nice and melty. I think they look pretty good. This was about 16 minutes for me. So I wonder how long it took for all of you. Let me just grab a spatula really quick. These move really, really easily because of all that butter that we poured in there. So I'm actually grabbing a different knife now. It's just a regular knife that is not serrated. It's not a bread knife. Get in there and kind of cut them how you'd like, but I just want to pull one out and see how we did. Maybe. I'm struggling here. There we go. All right. So that looks pretty good to me. Nice melty cheese and super buttery. So I hope you all enjoy these little sliders. And in the comment section of our YouTube video, that's where I will put all of the recipe notes, and then I'll add a couple tips in if you want to switch to Dijon mustard, and also if you want to add poppy seeds. And also if you are going to double the recipe, I'll put in all of that information for you, and everything that we specifically used, like the King's Hawaiian rolls. So I hope you enjoy, and I will see you next week.